College basketball is less than a month away. The madness starts on March 1st because just of how crazy that month is. But Selection Sunday is Sunday, March 16th.
Very exciting.
So the first NCAA tournament games in the first 4 are March 18th. So in exactly 1 month from now, we'll be starting the NCAA tournament. Not playing in that first 4 will not be the St. John's Red Storm. They are going to be in a first-round game. Thursday or Friday is one of the gems of the college basketball season. And it's amazing on how Rick Pitino has once again reshaped his image to become one of the gems of college basketball. And for a guy that was out of basketball for the troubles that happened at Louisville, went and took the job at Iona, and then led them to the NCAA tournament, and then now with an opening in New York City at St. John's, he takes over that program and has taken it to a top 10 level where they haven't been, Monse, in 25 years. And it's hard to believe, but the mystique of Rick Pitino has gotten even bigger. But I wonder, is it lost on some? And it may be lost on the audience that Rick Pitino is trying to get to a national championship. But that's where we start today with some audio that had you standing up and basically cheering as soon as she heard it. Right? You love this.
I did. No, I'm all about it.
You want to hear it now?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Rick Pitino, as a part of a documentary series from Vice Sports, talking to his team at halftime. This clip has gone viral over the last 24, 48 hours. Here's Rick Pitino with his BRE.
Dig in and be a basketball player. Dig in. Every time you miss a shot, your game deflates. We don't care about your missed shots. Play defense. You guys keep blowing opportunity upon opportunity upon opportunity. You're like children with bad things happening. Instead of digging in and be tougher, you wilt. Where is your toughness? Where have you guys been raised that you're so weak mentally that you just give up when something doesn't go right for you? Don't you know what adversity is all about? That's the game of life, not the game of basketball. You don't get down when things go wrong. You dig in and get tougher. Your whole life's going to be adversity. Learn how to deal with it.
So good. So good.
Did it bring flashbacks?
A little bit. I'm going to play that for my volleyball team tonight, right before the game, just so we can all get into it.
I don't know if any different time frames, but honestly, I don't know if I have been spoken to like that in 30 plus years. And I'm in my late 40s, so it would be high school.
Yes.
And that is what makes this clip, I think, so great, is because on the surface, you would think it's controversial.
Yes.
Look at what Rick Pitino is saying to his team. Listen to the things that Rick Pitino is saying to this team. I do think it helps that there is some music underneath it, and it's done in a motivational style documentary way, where if this had an opportunity to come off poorly, that it would be done in a way that it would be done away with. I don't think that St. John's or Vice are really trying to do a true expose on St. John's basketball. I'm sure St. John's has some say in it. But I would assume that on the surface, there are some people who think like, man, he's yelling. But I'm telling you, 90 to 95% of the feedback and the stuff that I have read, everybody is on board with what that is, and that's coaching.
Yeah, it just seems like we haven't seen this in a while, right? Like there's a gap, I feel like, in recent years that coaches have kind of maybe gone a little softer because the generation seems a little softer. I think it's different coaching women, girls. Like my coaches maybe dropped an F-bomb, not as many as he did, but that intensity, the yelling, the get your head out of your ass talk definitely was something I was very familiar with my coaches in high school and my club teams. And I just feel like I've heard that it's not really like that. So I feel like for me, it was more a breath of fresh air that's still going on.
I know in this day and age when you have so many college networks and different schools are being highlighted, and we had a lot of fun with the Big Ten Network and Iowa Sam over the last couple of days. You do get more of an inside look at what these coaches do. But again, like everything is kind of filtered out. What I think is so striking about this is it's something that you alluded to, and that is we don't see much of it these days, and we don't see much of that. And what that is a veteran head coach who has not decided to retire because they don't want to deal with the new world of NIL and the new world of the transfer portal, which, by the way, more power to you if you want to get out. If the game changed after I played by the same rules for 40 years, I get it.
Yeah.
Completely. We had Roy Williams on yesterday, and speaking with Doug Gottlieb, he ended up retiring. I 100% get it. There's no shade thrown to those coaches, but this is one of those that's still going.
Yeah.
One of the leftovers, if you will. I mean, he coached Providence to a Final Four in 1987. So this is Rick Pitino. And with all of the crap that Rick Pitino has gone through as a coach, there is this likability from him. But there's also just the basic principle that, Monty, you would get as someone who played high school sports. I played high school sports. Same with Jason Stewart, Iowa Sam, and Isaac Lowenkron, and anybody listening. There is a fine line between coaching and not coaching. And I'm just using the not coaching part to be where you would get flack for that. That is coaching. And everything that I've heard and seen online and social media is that point is being emphasized. In fact, in the show prior to us, the Doug Gottlieb show, who is the coach of the Green Bay Phoenix, win number 3 this past weekend, if you hadn't heard, Doug had this to say just a couple of hours ago on his own show, as he's now a college basketball coach, talking about Rick Pitino's comments.
The only issues you have with parents, and yes, sometimes coaches can step out of line. The only issues you'll have with parents, for the most part, are, we treat them well, so it's not like player treatment, but it's more in playing time, in role, in what their short-term and long-term future looks like. And then sometimes it's with other players, in terms of things going on behind the scenes that a head coach might not be aware of. For the most part, though, in regards to motivating them and, even calling their generation soft, like they're all parents, they all think they are too. So for the most part, that's not an issue.
Do you think that generation, today's generation, what would we call it, Gen Z? Is that what the word?
No idea who they are. But, I hear they're a little softer from my friends who have kids. And, I don't have kids, but it seems that it is a little bit softer than what we're used to. And to go with what you said of, like, there's a fine line between coaching and not coaching, with that fine line is, like, he didn't come off disrespectful to me. He didn't make me feel like he was degrading the players, and that's another fine line, because you sometimes you see a coach and you're like, I feel like you're down talking to me, and you're not gonna light a fire up the ass. You want to inspire, you want to get them excited, but get them going. And I feel like that's also a fine line, because I thought it was great. Again, I didn't hear any disrespect. I wouldn't, if I was listening to him, I wouldn't be like, man, my coach hates me. That's not how you would be feeling after that.
I think that, and that's what Rick Pitino's presence provides you. What I am interested in, because Rick Pitino said, like, how are you guys raised? If Doug Gottlieb says that with his 3-win team, without Doug having the experience, which many point out, or the success of winning national championships and coaching at the highest level in college basketball and in the NBA, like Rick Pitino has done, and has done it for as long as he has, you can get away with some of those things being said. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if every coach nowadays could say those sort of things. I think Rick Pitino can. I'm not sure. And I'm not saying it's wrong. Like, I felt like I was being coached there. Mm-hmm. I don't think that anything was below the belt on what he said. It was a way to motivate. But when you're getting yelled at. Heck, I hadn't played high school sports in 30 years. And I look back at my coaches, and one of my best coaches was my freshman basketball coach. And he yelled the most of any coach that I had. But it never was in a way where you were degrading. Now, when you're 14 and 15 years old, you're taking it different. You're 16 and 17. I'm sure maybe you're thinking it's different. But even back then, it didn't hit wrong. And that's why I can't understand it with this generation to what Doug's talking about. And maybe because Doug's team, I don't mean this as a slight, but because they haven't won a ton of games, if your kid's not playing, maybe that's why parents are saying, like, well, you're not winning games, why aren't you playing my kid?
Right, give him a chance.
Yeah, like that sort of thing. But to have parents be talking about it at the college level, to me, is completely absurd anyway. I just look at it like Rick Pitino gets more leeway than anybody, but nothing that he said crossed the line, and it's just 10 times more powerful than someone like Rick Pitino when someone like Rick Pitino says it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. There's levels to this. He has graduated to be able to say this. You're right. That one line about who raised you, you're right. Somebody inexperienced probably cannot say that. But Rick Pitino, with his history, can say pretty much anything he wants at this point because he has been successful. But there are levels to this. And like, you're not going to say that to your 8th grade basketball team. But the fact that it could be going on in college, this softness is crazy. Tougher. Where's the grit?
Do you think this affects generations, Jason Stewart? Do you think that the younger generation thinks that this is a bad message from Rick Pitino?
So to address your question from before, so Generation Z was born between 1997 and 2014.
Okay.
Okay, so I am a part of the problem. There was a drastic overcorrection with parents and this generation. And they are more coddled and they're more sensitive. I think that's just a fact, to be honest. So when I coach Little League, even, you need to measure your words. I got calls from parents. This is what my son said you said to the team. That's not acceptable. And I'm thinking that if I'm a parent watching this video, a parent of somebody who's a blue chipper or somebody that might play D1 someday, I don't know if I'm totally comfortable sending my kid to play for something like this, even with the credentials. And that I'm not being overly sensitive. I'm just saying that I don't know if my kid has been raised in a environment where he's been talked to like this and would respond well to this. I think that's probably where you and the two of you and me kind of disagree on this.
That is an interesting take.
I think that there is a softer generation, but that means that you have to weed it out more.
Yeah.
To find that athlete. Iowa Sam has something, and so does Isaac Lowenkron. We'll go to Isaac first.
Yeah, to echo what Jason had to say, there's actually a term for it. Now, you've heard of the term of helicopter parenting, right?
Yes.
Well, the term for the present generation, to which you, Dan, and me are part of, is snowplow parenting, meaning that we get in front of our kids and push all adversity away, and we overdo it so much that everything is handed to them without going through adversity, and they're not prepared for the real adversity of life. So for someone like me, it's a real balance of when to step in and protect your kids and when to let them just learn the hard way on their own. Like, I've taken my kids to the playgrounds and other kids have been like giving them a rough time or maybe roughhousing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to step back and let him deal with it on his own right now. And if it crosses too far, then I'll jump in. But it's kind of hard to determine where that line is. It was Dan's kid who was roughing up my kid, by the way.
I've had to say as much as well, where when you're in a playground situation, there are things that you do really have to balance it.
Of course,
like
yeah,
for
I can't
sure.
imagine.
The thing that the difference with some of this, and Iowa Sam will get to your point in a sec. We're talking about Division I high-level college basketball in a major conference.
Yep.
If you're playing for St. John's right now, your goals are likely to go to the NBA or to likely win a national championship. And so I don't think we can sit there and say, like, is this over the line or is this too much? And I don't think anybody is saying that. I do think that there is a difference when we're talking about a younger level where parents also have more access to you. Like no parent's going to call up Rick Pitino and tell him what to do. Just doesn't exist in that world. And honestly, no parent should be calling up a Division I head coach, whether it's Doug Gottlieb or Rick Pitino, and telling them what to do. These athletes are 18 years old. They can handle it themselves. And if they don't want to, guess what? There's something called the transfer portal, and they can go somewhere else and find a place to do it. I think it's hearing something like that from someone who is old school is refreshing. I'm curious to hear if there was the same sort of conversation from Nate Oates, a younger coach who's in his 40 at Alabama and having the same thing. I haven't seen John Shire in a Duke locker room do that sort of thing, but I am curious on how it would translate. I think we all gravitate to it because it's the old guy Pitino.
Right.
And hey, this is how it was because Rick Pitino, by the way, was coaching when we were all in high school and doing the same thing. So we can relate to that and say that, yeah, that's how it is. But this is also Division I college basketball. And so I think that when we look at this, you have to realize it. You, Jason, brought up a point. And by the way, Sam, I know you want to say something, but there was also, you brought up the point last year that when Brian Daboll kind of gave it to Tyrod Taylor on the sidelines of an NFL game, you felt it was a bad look for a head coach at that point.
I remember the timing was the issue for me. Remember, Tyrod Taylor, right? He did something at the end of a half to where I thought Daboll could have waited until they got into the locker room instead of berating him on the way to the locker room in front of all the cameras. I thought that was performative. I thought that was Daboll's his way of saying this wasn't my fault, what you just saw on TV. This was totally on my quarterback, and he was yelling at him in front of the cameras.
You felt it was disrespectful.
I thought it was.
And that's at the professional level.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember,
but he made that choice at that time. I thought that was
like you could have done it behind closed doors.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think like to that point, like we're all big boys here. In that scenario, we're all adults. Iowa Sam, you did want to jump in.
And to talk about when we're all adults, maybe when you become an adult, you can vote, you can buy liquor, you can smoke, you can gamble, and you also share the responsibility of other adults in the world. So I'm wondering, when is the best time in your life to be like yelled at in a constructive way, like Pitino is doing to his players? Okay, 16. But is it yes when you're young and impressionable, or is it when you're an adult and you're no longer protected by society? Is it okay to like? I think that when you are younger, when you are yelled at like that, that's when you're building character.
Right.
Your character's already partially built by the time you're 20, 21. Not all the way. Sometimes guys need a long way to go. But it's like, what is the most effective time to be yelled at like that, and when's the appropriate time to be yelled at like that?
I mean, I think ideally you around 16, 17, maybe when you're on the varsity team. Because that way, when you get to college, if you continue to play, it's not your first time experiencing something like that. Because I feel like it has to do with a respect thing. Like I used to be afraid of my coaches. I was telling Dan off air, my volleyball club coach, this young girl, really pretty black girl that I was like, I loved her, but I was terrified of her. I was afraid to mess up and disappoint her. And I was like, oh my God, Nisha, no, I'm going to get mad. I can't do this. And like, she was so serious and all she wanted was to win. But I like respected her so much. And if you respect the person that is maybe yelling at you, you're going to take it well if you respect that person.
I got yelled at when I was 11 years old by my Little League coach, who was my best friend's dad. And because I hung out so much with him, basically the dad kind of, treated me the same as his kids. And I ran to first base and missed a base. In a Little League game. I came back I remember it to this day, and I got an ear lashing from him on running. And I had never, I grew up in basically a single parent home. My parents were divorced when I was really young, grew up with my mom and my sister. And my mom had to say to my best friend's dad, the coach, he's not your son. Like he is my son. Like you have to, so you want to talk about levels. You want to talk about levels. Yeah. There's absolutely levels everywhere in trying to decide on what works. My whole point with this Pitino thing is we have crossed the level where it doesn't matter anymore. That's why I say 16 is an age, because you're still in high school, you're still at that point. All of these players are grown men, with the exception of Cooper Flagg, who started basketball at 17 and turned 18 this past December at Duke. Everyone is 18. Everyone is making their own choice. It is a different level. And if people are looking at this differently, I'm sorry. Like there is so much support of what Rick Pitino was saying, even to the point of where he says, like, how were you guys raised? He didn't mean it personally. Yeah. You wouldn't say that to an 11-year-old who misses first base running at Little League. You wouldn't say that at a volleyball game. You're not saying that sort of stuff. You're not. Like, but there's got to be some sort of direction and some sort of fear, and there is a line, and maybe the parents have pushed that line, but there is still a way to coach that way. And I still think that there's a way to coach that way on the other side of the line in the high school level to do those things. I think Gino Auriemma had probably the toughest, job of anybody, to your point of here's a man yelling at women and to do it in that way. And he's the most successful women's college basketball coach that we've ever seen. Like there's dynamics everywhere.